Imagine standing near a fire hundreds of thousands of years ago. Not a campfire you built on purpose. A fire started by lightning. A fire spreading through dry grass. You did not start it, you did not control it, but you are close enough to smell something. Meat, an animal that did not survive, still warm, still there. What would you do? Most people assume the first cooked meal was an accident. A piece of meat falling into flames, a root left too close to heat, something charred, something changed, and someone brave or hungry enough to taste it anyway. But the real question is older and harder than that. When did cooking begin? Not as a habit, not as a skill, as the first deliberate act of changing food with fire. The short answer is that we do not know exactly. That should not surprise you. Fire does not always leave clean evidence. Ash scatters. Burned bone can look like burned bone from any source. Hearths are difficult to date with certainty, and early humans did not write anything down. What we have instead are fragments, clues buried in rock and soil and bone. Evidence that points, sometimes strongly, sometimes weakly, toward moments in time when something important changed. The oldest strong evidence of controlled fire comes from a site in South Africa called Wonderwerk Cave. Researchers found burned bone and plant ash there. The evidence dates to roughly 1 million years ago. That is not the earliest possible fire use, but it is one of the earliest sites where the fire appears to have been inside a shelter, suggesting control, not just accident. Then there is Homo erectus. That species appeared around 2 million years ago. Long legs, a taller body, a larger brain than earlier relatives. Their anatomy changed in ways that are interesting. Smaller teeth, a shorter digestive tract compared to earlier human relatives. Those physical changes are exactly what you might expect in a species that was beginning to process food before eating it. Cooking breaks down fibers, it softens meat, it makes calories easier to absorb. If Homo erectus was cooking regularly, their bodies over generations could afford to invest less in digestion and more in brain size. That is the hypothesis of primatologist Richard Wrangham, and it is a powerful one. Cooking may not have just fed the human brain, it may have helped build it. But separating controlled fire from deliberate cooking is not easy. Fire can warm. Fire can frighten predators. Fire can provide light. Using fire to transform food requires another step. You have to connect what fire does to meat with the decision to use it that way consistently. Some researchers believe that step happened very early, close to the origin of Homo erectus. Others place regular cooking much later, around 400,000 years ago, when hearths became more common in the archaeological record. Sites in Israel, including Qesem cave, show repeated fire use with burned bone and cut-marked animal remains dating to roughly that period. The evidence there suggests cooking was not rare or accidental. It was a regular part of daily life. What did that change mean for a group of early humans? Think about what cooking does to time. Raw meat is harder to chew. A chimpanzee can spend hours each day just processing food with their jaws. Early humans who cooked could eat faster. That freed time to travel, to plan, to make tools, to teach. It also changed what food was worth eating. Starchy tubers buried underground are not very digestible raw. Cook them and they become a reliable energy source. Hard seeds change, tough roots change. Cooking expanded the menu. It turned the landscape into a larger pantry. Neanderthals also used fire. Their hearths have been found at multiple sites across Europe and the Middle East. Burned plant material, charred seeds, cooked animal bones. Neanderthals were not eating everything raw. They understood fire well enough to use it repeatedly and deliberately. Some researchers argue they may have cooked plant foods more than we once assumed. Phytoliths, tiny silica structures from plants, have been found at Neanderthal sites alongside charred residue. That suggests they were processing a wider range of foods than the old image of pure meat eaters allowed. Neanderthals were not primitive in the kitchen. They were working with the same basic knowledge any fire-using human would need. The gap between early fire use and systematic cooking may never be perfectly resolved. That is the uncomfortable part of this story. Evidence survives when conditions are right, and conditions are rarely right for 1 million years. A hearth in a cave has better odds of surviving than a fire made in open air beside a river. An animal bone tossed into flames may char in a way that looks natural. Researchers use microscopy, isotope analysis, and careful site stratigraphy to separate genuine controlled cooking from natural burning events. It is painstaking work, And every few years, a new site shifts the picture slightly. That is not a flaw in the science. That is how the science works. What cooking did to human social life is harder to measure, but probably just as important. A meal prepared by fire is not a solitary act in the same way raw feeding can be. It takes time to prepare. It draws people together around a source of heat and light. Anthropologists have argued that the hearth became a social center, a place to share food, to sit together, to talk, if early humans were using language in any meaningful form. The fire created something like a shared moment, a reason to gather, a reason to cooperate. You can see echoes of that in every culture on Earth today. Meals are rarely just about calories. They are about presence, about ritual, about who belongs to the group. That impulse may trace back to the first time a family or band sat near a fire and divided cooked food among themselves. Cooking also likely changed how humans tasted the world. Raw meat and cooked meat taste different. Roasted roots and raw roots are almost different foods. Early humans who discovered that fire made food taste better had a reason to seek that result again. Flavor preference and caloric reward reinforced each other. The habit became cultural, then biological. Brain structures linked to reward and memory encoded the preference. Generation after generation, the choice to cook became less of a discovery and more of an expectation. By the time modern Homo sapiens appeared, cooking was probably not remarkable. It was simply what humans did. It was part of what being human meant. The fire was not a tool used occasionally. It was a relationship, something humans maintained, shared, and built social life around. And that relationship, which may have begun near a lightning-struck carcass on an open plain, never really ended.